I'm not turning into a book account. I finished this book like really fast. I think I read it in like a day and like, or I started like the day before, like I read a chapter and then like I read the entire thing the next day. Cause like sometimes you start a book and like you're like, okay, this is great. I'm gonna keep reading. It's got a great hook, but I'm suddenly busy. And then, oh gosh, I hate my hair. It always looks fake. Ugh, so flat. Like you read a book and the first chapter is like amazing, hooked, you're in. The author did its job. And then you're like, ah shoot, I've got life to do. And then once you pick it back up, you finish it, which is really wonderful. Yeah, so I um I do these things once in a while where so I have a Kindle and I do like the online library thing and I get my books from the library. But I knew this already, but my friend sent me I think it was an NPR article that said that um it actually costs libraries like they have to pay an ebook fee every single time someone checks out the book. They're basically renting the book for you. So like it costs more money for the libraries to for you to check out an ebook versus checking out a physical book because they bought this for I don't know, like $16.99 or however much books cost these days. $23.99. I don't know. They bought it once and then like you can read it as many times as you want. So I went on my Libby app and I like looked for all these books that I had on my holds. And then I was like, oh yeah, so this author, she is called, okay, Beatriz Williams. So I got this mixed up with Fiona Davis, I think is the name of the other author that I like. Her books are usually woman led and they're usually a split slash multiple timeline thing. No, what am I saying? It's parallel timelines. Wait, I'm getting them confused. I think they're both similar. So both Fiona Davis and Beatrice Williams, they do this thing where the main character is like someone in the modern times. And then there is also a character happening at this in past times. And their stories are similar slash parallel and like the modern times girl, she'll discover something or she'll live something and like this a similar thing will be happen to the pastimes girl and then somehow at the end of the line their story kind of like converges like oh I'm living in her apartment or oh she's my great grandmother's aunt or something like that or like cousin or something like that so she does those books. They both do those books and I really 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 love them because it's like it's got that element of like current times woman and like romantic-y but not romance, you know, like not romance with the sexy, it's just like oh like girl meets boy and stuff like that, but she also has like trials and tribulations, so it's not like it passes the Bechdel test. It shows stuff in modern times, which like helps, and then it brings to like the past times where like it's all the glitz and the glams of the 20s or the 30s or the depression or the Great Depression or the Prohibition, stuff like that. So like it's interesting on multiple levels and I really like books like that, and especially like I can't see them, it's not a movie, but like I like books where the women are like, you know, like they got their nice hair, their curls, they got their hats on, it's proper and they're all like proper and stuff. Like i love I love imagining in my head like there it's a period piece basically, but like American period piece from like this one's from the 30s and then it ends in 40s, right? Like it's that time where like it's not proper for a young lady to be alone with a man. I don't know, stuff like that. I had this book, Tiny Little Things, on my waitlist thingy, and then I realized it was one of three, so I got the other three. I mean two. And then I found this right next to it on the shelf because they were all at my library except for one of them. And then if you flip into the main inside book cover, it tells you which one comes first. This one says 1938. This one says 1964, which is after that. This one is 1966, and the last one is 1966, but not summer. That one's fall. So like they're in order, and I think they're about each one of like the sisters in the story or something like that. It also is like the Schuler sisters or something. Okay, so this book, it's basically the main character's name is Lily, and her best friend girly is called Budgie, which is like a nickname, like a bird, the budgie. And then Lily is in the past times in 1931. Lily's dating some guy named Nick, and he's Jewish, which was not as acceptable at the time, especially with the stuff happening in Europe with Hitler and stuff. And then in the present timeline is 6.5 years, or I guess in that timeline it would be like 7 years later, 6.5 years later in 1938 summer. Nick and Budgie I can't pronounce things. Nick and Budgie are married. So he married her best friend, and I was pretty much pissed off the entire book at him / the best friend, because like he like shows, so they are like summering in Rhode Island, and he's one of those like New York guys who he comes over on the weekends, and the wife is just there all week and like enjoying the sun and stuff, and like everyone's shunning Budgie because like she married a Jewish person, which wasn't acceptable at the time. And Lily was just like, well, I have to pretend to be her best friend again because I actually like her. But also, she married my boyfriend, my college sweetheart. I try to be scarce when he comes down on the weekends or over. Is it down or? I don't know geography. We know this. The parallel stories, it shows Lily in 1938, summer of 1938, and like going through the motions of like it's summer, and then they show up, and then like I'm being back to friends with her, and I'm taking care of my sister, and like all these things happening. And then the pastime story of 1931 is when they first met, and they met in college, and he's at a different college, and he basically shows up at her dorm like the next day and was like, hey, I couldn't stop thinking about you. You're like the most beautiful person I've ever met. And they like basically are both like infatuated with each other, and they fall in love, and they just like love each other. But like she's the type of girl that properly court for marriage, and he does. The only thing they do is kiss. Like he doesn't touch under her clothes or anything, and I kind of love that. So in 1931, they're like dating and stuff, and then it's like winter break, and they're both like, we're going back to the city, and he's like, will you meet my parents? And she's like, yeah. And then he's like, can I meet your parents? And she's like, yeah. One of the days they like meet at Central Park. He's kind of like defeatist, and he's like, you don't actually want me to meet your parents, blah blah blah. And she's like, I'll do it right now. And then or takes him back to her apartment. And then her dad has tremors and stuff. I think it's Parkinson's. But obviously back then they weren't as in the know about stuff like that. Her dad faints, and she's like, oh no. Her dad like throws him out, and then I think he like faints or something. So she doesn't see him for like 2 weeks, but he invited her to like a New Year's Eve party, and then she sneaks out that night, and she's at this wonderful party, and they sneak away to his bedroom, and he doesn't try anything with her, which is like par for the course of like his behavior throughout the entire story. And then he like gives her a ring or something. They're like making promises to each other that they're gonna be forever together, and then he's like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And then she suddenly realizes like, hey, my mom's at this party. It's a masquerade party. So she's like, hey, I think my mom's at this party. We should like not be here. And then they run away, and he takes her to his dad's secret apartment for business meetings. And he gives her a ring, and she says yes, and they're about to do it, and then they notice that both her parents, his dad and her mom, are coming up the stairs. So they like run out the side, and she's like, "Let's run away and elope." And they go to Lake George, which I don't know where that is, but she does say Niagara as the other option. So I'm guessing they're heading to Canada. They're like 21. They're of age. It's fine. And then they like finally do it when they get there, and they're like, "Oh, it's January 1st. All the places are closed. We can't go get our thing at City Hall, but let's just do it anyway cuz like we got rings on our finger." January 2nd, her auntie shows up and was like, "Hey, your dad like had a stroke." And she's like, "Oh shoot, I got to go. I can't get married. Sorry." And then so we find out in present times that she actually broke up with him after that because she thought it was the Lord's fault that her dad had a stroke, and because she ran away. They asked the doorman to like send her dad a note to be like, "Hey, I'm safe. I'm just running away to get married." Um so she thinks that her note made her dad have a stroke. She sends the ring back to him, and he's like distraught and like kind of waits for her for a little bit. And then he goes to Paris because his dad has a friend there. Someone tells Nick that Lily had a child, and it was exactly that 9 months, after they did it. And even though they were careful, maybe there was an accident. Everything's not always secure. He begins debauchery and basically like gallivants around Paris with a lot of women. And fast forward to 1938, he married Lily's best friend, like earlier that year or something like that. This part is where like the spoiler, like the main spoiler starts. Like that was just a recap of the story. It turns out when his dad and her mom were coming to the secret apartment, they've actually been having an affair. And the reason the dad fainted the first time he saw the son was that he knew his wife was having an affair with this guy's father. So it kind of like distraughted him, and then he passed out. Gone to the apartment to find his daughter before she ran away, but found his own wife and boyfriend's father there. Um, so that gave him a stroke. But the mom basically let her own daughter take the fall for it, and like let her own daughter believe that she caused the dad's stroke. And then the 9 month later baby was actually mom's with, boyfriend with Nick's dad. Everyone thought like, "Oh, you ran away to elope. This is definitely your child, right?" And the mom basically let the whole society like think that it was her daughter's love child. Meanwhile, it was actually her love child. And like obviously they didn't know like, "Oh, I'm dating the dad. I'm dating the daughter or the son." Like they didn't know each other were like screwing the same person of different time of like this generation. But like it's kind of weird they now share a half sister. um and then Budgie actually had like Nick tells Lily like, "Hey, I actually only slept with your best friend once. Like it was before we got married, and then she came to me and was like, 'Hey, I'm pregnant,' and she wasn't. Like she seduced him. She actually lied and then like blackmailed him a bunch, and turns out she knew that the little girl was both Nick and Lily's half sister, and she also was sleeping with his dad as well. Like Nick's dad was messy. Oh, and both their fathers died. Nick and Budgie's. So he like married her out of obligation and blackmail. On their honeymoon, he was like, "Okay," she says to her like, "Okay, I want to like have a real marriage with you, even though it started kind of shaky. Like I want a real marriage." And she's very bigoted, and she's like, "I never want to have your babies because you're, not pure bloodline," which is super sad and like problematic. And then when Lily hears this, she's like, "I'll have your babies. I want your babies." But obviously he's married and he's righteous, and he says, "I'll go break it off with her." And she's like, "Yay." The reason that they reconciled and Nick told Lily all this information was that Budgie's boyfriend, when Lily and Nick met, some guy named Grant. He was like the all-American white boy, blonde, pretty blue eyes. Budgie was like all summer was like, you should date him. You should date him. You're not married. So she pushes him onto her, and she's like, sure, I guess I'll date Graham. And like she agrees to like be engaged with him by the end of the summer because Budgie was like, I'm pregnant with Nick's baby. Like, Budgie is messy. She's like rubbing it into Lily's face like the entire summer. I'm with your best, like, I'm with your boyfriend, your college sweetheart. Like, Budgie is a backstabbing. After the engagements like announced the family, Lily's mom's like, oh my god, that's awesome, here's the key to our apartment, you don't have to stay in a hotel in New York, stay in our apartment. And then Lily like goes back to New York early to like surprise him and finds him in a chair with the next door neighbor's 17-year-old girl on the floor in front of him. And maybe it was okay at the time, maybe the age of is different in New York, who knows. But she's distraught and goes to Nick in the city because he's working there on a Tuesday, and he basically tells her like, yeah, he's been like screwing behind your back this whole time. Oh yeah, and Budgie's baby's not mine, it's probably his. They've been screwing every single night after he comes to court you, because he also won't sleep with her because she has to be properly courted. It kind of like sucks, good and bad, because like obviously it's like okay at the not okay at the time to be like intimate with another person before marriage if you're a woman, because patriarchy. It kind of sucks to be one of those women who are like, you're only allowed to be courted, you're precious, you're pure, all that stuff. And then like her best friend is like, she's the kind of girl you have a good time with. It's kind of tough to be like the one who's like on a pedestal, but like obviously sure, it's nice that you respect her, but like the concept of like purity and all that stuff is like, it's dumb. It's like it only matters if you yourself care about it, and like she doesn't, but she's like, sure, I guess I'll go along with it. But like turns out he was like screwing her best friend every night. It's like anger inducing, like the more you read about it, like every time it goes to one of those chapters you're like, ugh. He Nick basically tells Lily all of this stuff, like basically catches her up from like since New Year's Day that they broke up, and or they last saw each other until like now what happened. And then Nick goes to break up with Budgie, who's still in Rhode Island, and basically she tries to harm herself, and Lily has this like women's intuition to like, I gotta be there too. Or she finds out about her daughter or something, or she finds out about her mom's affair, and then so she goes to Rhode Island and like yells at her mom, and her mom's like, women who make excuses, like we don't forgive women who do bad things, right? Like men definitely can't do bad things, but women are like, there's no double standard, you're bad, you can't be doing bad things. She like yells at her mom like, you let me take all of that. And then like the storm of the century comes. It's a harrowing few chapters, or 1 and a half chapters, where like everyone's house basically gets swept away. Like literally there's no more, like all the row of houses were all gone, and there were some lives lost. It was her mother actually, and then Budgie, who accidentally got a cut while they were floating on doors. And then but Nick, Lily, their aunt, Lily's little sister, who is not her real child, they all survived. It ends with them adopting the sister, even though like it is both their blood relatives. It's messy, but hey, it was the 40s, whatever. And then Normandy invades, and he enlists because he's Jewish, and he's like, I have to join the fight. And she births their third child. The book ends with him sending back a telegram that he is indeed alive and full of joy. So the last segment of the last chapter is about how he enlists, and they're like worried, like, is he gonna be okay? Is he gonna be okay? But plot armor, he's alive, because Graham actually did not survive enlisting in the war. I feel like after saying all that, I don't know why I was so excited about this book. I like the parts where she was distraught all summer and had to watch her best friend with her ex-man. I don't know. I like romantic books because like the two main characters end up together, but it's also fun to see like the whole timeline of how they fell in love, how they got here, the messy, and then like how they get back together. And there is two there's two total sex scenes, but they're not like graphic like those romance novels where like he's so big and like she's like oh my god and like like those books, even though they're fun to read, I find them so awkward and it feels like it's a man who has seen too many adult films and is pretending to be a woman. So like I've read stuff where it's like, oh, she's so every single one. She's so soft and white and pure in the moonlight. Oh, so supple and like stuff like that. And I'm like, this is cringy and awkward. Um. Anyway, I'm gonna go return these to the library and go buy some bagels.